All right, so it's saying preparing to live stream the meeting. I know there's like a little delay, so we can just start. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Let me pause this on YouTube so we don't get an echo. All right, good. So we are live. Welcome to the weekly Q&A live with Mia and Rebecca Satori here. So great to be with you guys again. And of course, if you have any questions, we want to hear your questions too, and we'll answer them live on air. So I'm Rebecca Satori. I have been in the coaching industry for 12 years. I've been behind the scenes of many 6, 7, and 8-figure companies and help them to grow their sales and help them to grow their businesses. And essentially what I do in my business is I teach people how to create a healthy business ecosystem. So I take a look at how your unique humanness is operating, and then I merge that with how your business is operating. So we kind of do a bit of a business evaluation to take a look at what's working, what's not working, what team members are working or not working, and why. And then we match that. It's kind of like a matchmaking, like you want your business to match with you. And then we find what I call your success sweet spot. So we are here live again with Mia this week, and she has some questions to ask. And again, I'm on the hot seat. I don't know what they're going to be, and we're going to have fun like we usually do. And who knows what's going to transpire or come out of me. So here we go. Or Mia.
Okay. So first I want to touch into, I feel like more recently than ever, but there's a lot of societal pressures to be that they want you to be someone, politically correct, whatever, like someone you're not. How do you stay true to yourself? And have you always felt that you've been very true to yourself? Do you think it's something that comes as you've grown?
That's a great question, first and foremost. So let me just process that through my brain, because that was such a highly intelligent question. So, it's kind of interesting because of the current time period that we're living in to think about. It's almost like anything goes, right? Like we're living through some kind of crazy times where it's like, I identify as this or I identify as that, which I personally do not support and agree with that. And people might get mad hearing that out of my mouth, and I don't really care. You're not my people. I'll just throw this in there. This is kind of super funny. I was listening to this guy on YouTube a couple of months ago, or like maybe 6 months ago, and he was kind of teaching you how to fill out an application to move from being in what we call maritime law into common law. And I don't know if you even know what that is, but everyone's going to have to do their own research. Okay. I've dived down this wormhole or this rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it. It's very, very fascinating. But as soon as your mother signs your birth certificate, you are immediately signed into maritime law, and you get a CUSIP number on the back of your birth certificate, and they begin trading your birth certificate across the stock market in a bond exchange, and they make money off of your birth certificate. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But the guy was really funny because he was teaching you how to fill out this application so that you can move into common law, which basically gets you out of a lot of what we would call corrupt systems out there that are currently, kind of crumbling, and then new systems are being built up and that sort of thing. But he says, when you get to the part where they ask if you're a male or a female, take a quick check between your legs. And if you have a set of balls, then you check the mailbox. Okay. So I kind of thought that was hilarious. And at the same time, the whole be this way. But so it's very confusing, I would imagine. So also for your generation too, where it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to school with people who might identify as him, her, or him, he, or she, they. I don't even know what all the pronouns are. I can't even keep up with it. It's absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. Again, if you want to move on, if you don't like this message, this is my message. This is my channel. So, and I have deeper opinions about that with my many decades of psychological research and, my passion and my expertise is in the area of psychology and human behavior and understanding why people operate the way they do and why they do the things that they do, which is why I'm so good at what I do in business coaching, because I can go into a small business or a company or solopreneur's business and be able to explain why you're operating the way that you are, the subconscious programmings that are running within your mind and your psyche, and heal certain things that need to be healed in order for you to operate optimally. But it is I just wanted to take a moment to point that out, that we're living in a time period at the moment where we are being told, think like this, behave like this, look like this. We kind of touched upon that in last week's Q&A. For those of you who missed last week's Q&A, we talked a lot about femininity and masculinity and the messages, the subliminal messages, and also the direct messages that women have gotten over the years, and how what that has resulted in as a result of women listening to that. So I just really wanted to presence that, because there is a lot of confusion and distraction that is purposefully being created, because when you're distracted and you're confused, you cannot pay attention to the truth. And you're exhausted. You're looking over here. You're confused about this. You're distracted with this. So, we're attached to our phones every day, all day. It's this is the extension of our human body in many cases. I literally had a guy yesterday almost walk right in front of my car because he was on his phone. He was not in a crosswalk. And I thought, well, gosh, it's a good thing I'm conscious and I'm paying attention, because this guy would have been run over by any other driver. And so, this is a two-part answer. So to touch upon the second part of your question, which was, have I always been true to myself, or has that evolved? It has totally evolved, massively evolved. But I think on the spectrum of when I was maybe your age, I probably was a little more in touch with who I was and how I wanted to operate. But it didn't, that's all to say, but I still can remember being your age and being influenced by trends. And, last week on the Q&A, we touched upon how much more bombardment you all have in your generation, where it was I had Glamour magazine and Cosmo magazine and Self magazine and that sort of thing. So those messages were coming at me from that vantage point. Also Tell-Lie Vision, which we touched upon that too. And so I think it is important, we also talked about intuition. So to run something through your own intelligence system, we all have our own intelligence system. You can call it your personal guidance system, your own GPS. But we all have that sense of something's wrong here, or I feel danger, or we talked about last week, I like this person, or this person's annoying to me. We all have these kind of visceral, physiological feelings about something to begin with. And so, there's also the aspect of what's proper etiquette. I went to modeling school when I was in 8th grade, and I was taught a lot of etiquette then. And I've been very good about teaching my sons proper etiquette. And I'm glad that I have, because it's in certain settings, you don't want to be the person that's acting inappropriately. So, but I think, again, if that's coming from this place of wanting to be a people pleaser, or not wanting to stand out, or feel shame, or, guilt or blame, or, just I'm just going to be quiet. Essentially what we're talking about here, Mia, is interesting, because I had this conversation with one of my clients earlier today, where women in particular tend to pendulum back and forth between I'm either too much or I'm not good enough. So it's if I'm too much, then I'll disappear. And if I'm not good enough, then I'll shrivel up. And so I think it's important to have the cues that are external to you, and to have a proper upbringing if you can. If not, it's your responsibility as you become a young adult or a grown adult to begin to parent yourself if you weren't parented properly as a young adult. To be the loving adult to yourself, and to honor yourself, and to tell yourself, I love you, you're amazing, you're beautiful. Like, I know you're scared right now, but we're going to get through this. You know, self-talk and mirror work is actually really, really powerful. So do I keep up with trends? Like, I'm 46, you know, I definitely keep up with trends. Like, I've always been super interested in the beauty industry. I used to do nails. So that, like, what's in fashion, what's not in fashion, like, that's very of interest to me. But again, it's taking those cues and then saying, but what's true to me? You know, I'm not going to go and wear like something that a 20-year-old would wear per se at 46 years old and just be like, oh, this is what's in fashion, you know, like, so it's, you know, I've said this a million times and I'll continue to say it forever and ever, that self-knowledge is one of the greatest powers on the face of the planet. This is a very long-winded answer, by the way, but we're getting to the end. So everyone stick with us. So, you know, again, knowing yourself. And it really is about knowing when you're giving yourself up or you're abandoning yourself or you're betraying yourself. So one of my greatest teachers is Caroline Myss, and she talks about archetypes. And we all have 4 archetypes. We all have 12 archetypes, but the other 8 are unique. So I'm just going to talk about the 4 basic archetypes that we all have. Number 1 is the saboteur. Number 2 is the victim. Number 3 is the child, and there are different aspects of the child. You could be a wounded child, you could be a magical child. I'm not going to get too deep into that. Everyone can go do their own research. And then last one is a prostitute. And it might sound very interesting to say that, but if we look at like, where am I giving myself up? Where am I abandoning myself? Where am I betraying myself? Where am I doing something that I don't want to do because I feel obligated or I feel like I need to be a people pleaser? That is what we would call the prostitute archetype. So anytime you're choosing to do something that society's telling you to do, you have to come back to the foundation of, what's my why? Why am I doing this? So for me to keep up with beauty and fashion trends, I love it. It's something that fulfills me. It's an expression of my creativity. It's an expression of my personality. Whenever I go somewhere, I pick an outfit and jewelry and makeup and all that stuff based upon like the energy of the place. So it's something that's fun to me. Now, if I'm like, oh, I better wear this because these people are going to be here and da 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 da, then I'm not being true to myself. So I hope that gives a good example of that. But when we do that, that would be an example of giving yourself up, AKA the prostitute archetype, which I know that word is a very like big buzzword that might trigger some people. But if you really dive into the archetype aspect of that, and PS, all of those archetypes, you might hear victim, prostitute, saboteur, and think negativity. But every archetype has a positive and a negative or a light aspect and a shadow aspect.
That was a very good answer.
Good. That was a very good question. So I was like, wow, there's a lot of layers to this.
Okay, I guess taking a little bit of a step down, because you were just mentioning your background in psychology and how it's influenced so much of your work. What made you like, I know a lot of like, at least kids like my age, I'm a junior in high school, so it's really getting into like, what do you, or even like your youngest son, like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do when you get going into college? Like, I'm deciding what major while I'm applying to colleges. What made you like psychology? Like, this is what I want.
Good question. First of all, I think this is one of the most, this is like one of the craziest things on the face of the planet, that at like 16, 17, 18, you should know what the heck you want to do. So this is hilarious. First of all, I went to college when I was a senior in high school because I was bored with high school curriculum. And so, you know, I took a couple of courses, you know, at a community college, and then I ended up going to community college because my philosophy, which remains the same today, all these years later, is that English 101 is English 101. I don't care if you're at Harvard or if you're at your local community college. I really don't. It's the same freaking thing, okay? And PS, if you're at a community college, you're going to save a lot of money, which is what I did. I got a AA degree, and then I transferred to Towson University. And to my great, you know, happiness, like I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, my GPA doesn't transfer, but my credits transfer. So like, it was almost like having a fresh start to get a great GPA, which I graduated with like a 3.8 in a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. But in my very first semester in college, fresh out of high school, like obviously I already had 2 college courses under my belt at this point. My very first semester, one of the first courses I took was psychology. And guess what? I got an E. An E. Like, I don't even know if they have E's today or what, or an F, whatever you want to call it. I failed or I dropped out. Like, yeah, I think I failed psychology. And then I took a semester off and I was just so overwhelmed because there's people in their 40s that don't know what they want to do for the rest of their life, right? Like, even teaching someone like you're going to pick one thing and you're going to pick one thing for the rest of your life, it's total bullshit. So one of the best courses I took in community college was called Career 101. And you took the Myers-Briggs type indicator test. And back in my day, you had to like actually get your parent to take you to the library, and they had like a career section where you could look up like, how much does an interior decorator make? How much does a psychologist make? Like, I knew a psychologist wasn't going to make that much money. So anyways, it was kind of like one of those general degrees that you could just choose back in the day. So after taking a semester off, I then, you know, the funny thing about it is that I graduated with a psychology degree. I graduated in 3.5 years instead of 4 years, even though I took a semester off, and I graduated with a 3.8. And I think the key here is to know what kind of a learner you are. So this is something like when I work with small businesses, entrepreneurs, and companies, number one, to get to know them, and then number two, to get to know their team. They think sometimes there's like this huge communication barrier when actually it's a learning barrier. And so knowing what kind of a learner you are first and foremost is incredibly important. So personally, I'm auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So for example, if I have an issue with my phone and I call Apple up and they're like, oh, we'll send you an article to read. I'm like, no. I will not read it. I'm like, I need you to be on the phone with me and walk me through this. So it's audio kinesthetic or visual kinesthetic. So as soon as you know that, then you can harmonize within your own self to know, like, I mean, I can listen to talking books all day and go get TED Talks on them. Like, I absorb that information so quickly. But if you ask me to go read a book and then give a speech on it, it's going to be really difficult for me. And I've had reading comprehension issues since I was 10. So as a business owner, it's very critical for you to know how you process information. And it's also really important to know the people that work for you, or even your kids for that matter. How do they process information? I can remember in preschool, I'm going to get in trouble for telling this story because I'm telling it because you're going to know the story now. In preschool, my youngest, I was called into the office in preschool for my youngest son. And the teacher was like, so this is how all the other children are coloring, and this is how Austin is coloring. And even when I was in my early 30s, I looked at the teacher and I said, my son is not the problem. I said, how you're teaching is the problem. And so again, going back to the corrupt systems that are present right now, we have a school system, we have lots of school systems that are teaching in one way. And if you don't fit into this box and you don't learn that way, well, you're SO out. And so I'm going to do a reference here for one of my amazing friends and clients, Sherry Diefband. Go to Aramis Creative Learning Center. She is in the process of literally changing the entire educational systems across the globe. So the way that they're teaching kids is absolutely outstanding. They currently have online virtual classes that you can take. You can take a pendulum class as an 8-year-old and up. You can take a creative arts class. You can take a tarot reading class. Like, there's so many amazing classes and we'll put a link in the comments from this video for anyone who's interested in going and checking out Sherry's amazing work, because they're taking donations to begin building the very first Aramis Creative Learning Center down in Florida. And it's just an absolutely beautiful concept of education because it gives children freedom. There's no like pressure with grades. It's progress, not pressure. And then it's, you know, you selecting courses that are going to serve you, that you actually have an interest in perhaps a market sector that you're interested in. And one of the things that we talked about in the business coaching that I did with her is down the road, even doing like, you know, when I was in high school, I went and worked in a physical therapist office for a week. And it took a whole week of my life for me to find out that is definitely not the career path for me. But down the road, I believe there's going to be, just like you've done virtual reality. I mean, you guys have had so much fun. Apparently, like, people get punched in the face and all kinds of fun things happen, but that there would be a virtual reality career experience. So if you're like, oh, I think I want to be a heart surgeon, that you could put on a virtual experience for 30 minutes and have enough happening during that VR that you're like, oh my gosh, this is totally a path I want to pursue. So instead of like in my day where I went to the library and I'm reading all the statistics about the competition, and, you know, we'll use interior decorating, like I said earlier, as an example, how much they make, how competitive it is, what education is needed, and so on and so on. You literally could put on a VR experience and go in, like, really like feel like you're in that office experience, you're in that heart surgeon experience, for example, which I think is really, really cool. So, you know, it's a process and you're not going to know all the answers right now. And I think this is a good life lesson. You don't always know all the answers for any situation you're in, but it's like, take the next step, because the next step will give you the next step. And then the next step will give you the next step. And a lot of times people get frozen in what we called perfection paralysis, okay? Or paralysis analysis, you know, whatever anyone wants to call it. But in the coaching industry, it's very common for people to get stuck in perfection paralysis, where they're like, oh, it's not perfect, I don't want to put it out there. I mean, before we went live today, we're like, okay, your video is not that clear. I'm like, I forget what button I'm supposed to push, but we're going to go live. Like, we're all natural. It's authentic. You know, you can come here to the Rebecca Satori channel. If you're watching this, please hit like, subscribe, and please share this video as well. But you can't get stuck in that paralysis perfection, because you're not going to have my life with this like runway that I'm just going to like, I'm going to be here. As soon as you think you're going to be somewhere, life will literally throw something at you and be like, ha ha ha, you thought this was going to be how you were living your life in 5 years? I've had this happen in my life, I don't even know how many times. And you just have to roll with it. And the more that you can do that and not personalize it, the easier it's going to be for you in this life journey. So I would say, just, you know, what some of your interests are, put those puzzle pieces together that you have, and then, you know, also engage the universe and life's magic and God, and be like, you know, what's next for me? Like, okay, God, like, this is what you've shown me. Like, what's next? Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. One last question, my love.
Okay.
I don't think, let's see if we have any. All right. We have no questions over on the other side here. So.
I don't want to dig too much, give it too much free information with your coaching.
You get to do whatever you want. This is a great example. When people say that, they think they have control over someone else. They don't. It's an illusion. So a lot of times people will judge themselves before saying something because they think it'll prevent them from being judged, and it doesn't work. So I want you to give yourself permission to ask whatever you want. And it's my responsibility to, this is like healthy interdependence versus codependence. And we can talk about that on the show one time. That'll be pretty explosive, the codependent thing. But yeah, that you get to ask whatever you want. You're in your autonomy, your independence, and your power. And so am I. And I get to remember it's 5:36 and I have a deadline to go to my next activity, and that I will be able to answer in a way that is succinct to the point. Or I could even be like, wow, we've got to like TBC this. So go for it, baby.
Trying to get succinct. What would you say is the best confidence advice that you've ever heard, or the best confidence advice that you could give?
To increase one's confidence? Yeah, okay, perfect. Like I said earlier, just even the mirror talk and the self-talk, You know, a lot of people talk about manifesting. I personally talk about magnetizing because it's more of a law of the universe. Manifesting was just kind of like a man-made, made up thing. People don't really even understand it to a large degree. But when you want to manifest something, I don't care what it is, like, you know, more money, more health, more wealth, loving yourself more, fill in the blank, a soulmate, it doesn't matter. You are not going to be able to manifest anything that you desire when your self-talk is in the toilet. That's one of my famous coaching phrases. So we all have 60,000 thoughts a day ish, maybe more, maybe less. And, you know, so if you're like, oh, you're so stupid, I can't believe you did that. Or like, you know, you're getting dressed and you're getting ready to go out and you're like, oh my God, look at this wrinkle. Look at, like, ew, you look so ugly. Or, you know, boy, you really screwed up that business meeting, you know, whatever it is. Any kind of negative self-talk, it's not how you would speak to a child. One of the best things that I ever heard was, if someone took what you were saying in your head to yourself and said it out loud to a child, you would probably get arrested for child abuse. So if we think about it from that perspective, like, how would I ever say this to my best friend? No. Then, you know, so be your own best friend. Being your own best friend. And we didn't grow up with perfect parents. No one does. No one does. I promise. And so sometimes we have to reprogram like bad thoughts that were, you know, like projected upon, you know. Your job again is to reparent yourself as you get older and to continue reparenting yourself. And I believe we do that through self-talk and self-love. And so I believe the greatest confidence builder is reprogramming what you're saying to yourself. If you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I love you, you're amazing, and you astound me. And I did that very early on in my business. When I very first started my business in 2010, I used to do free teleconference calls. That was our technology back then. Here we are on YouTube, right? But this might be mortifying for someone to come on video. Like, that's even more intimidating. And so, you know, yes, I was intimidated, but you know, I was still doing these telecalls. Like, that was what I was guided to do in my coaching program. It helped me grow my my business at the very beginning. And I would literally sweat. Like, I started thinking like I should just do these calls like with no pants on, because I would be done the calls and I would just be like drenched in sweat because I was so like freaking out, like intense, like tense and all that stuff. Okay. But every time I finished any of my work, I would always go to the mirror. I have a mirror in my office right over here. I've always had a mirror in my office. Okay. I would literally go over to the mirror. I would put my hands on my heart and I would be like, I see you, Rebecca. I am so proud of you. You are incredible and you are impacting people like you can't even imagine. You are a gift to the world. I'm so proud of you doing this afraid. That is the greatest confidence builder, in my personal opinion. It's doing things afraid. It's doing things afraid. That is the fastest path to growth. Like, the greatest place as outside of your comfort zone. And if you think about like somebody who runs a 5K or even a marathon, I've never done that, but I remember when I first ran my first 5K way back when my youngest son was 1. So we're talking 15 years ago. And I remember crossing that finish line. It was a 5K. Okay. That's like 3 miles. That's not that long. And I was like, it was like I had given birth to a third child. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did this. But like, I trained for it. So it's like when you set out to do something and then you keep your word to yourself and you have positive self-talk. This is the key. This is the secret sauce. Here's the punchline. Okay. It's when you set out to do something, you do it afraid, and you keep your word to yourself, which builds self-trust, and you use positive self-talk along the way. Boom. You will catapult to the next level of self-confidence. So we'll end the show with a bang.
Thank you.
Is that a good answer?
Yes, very much so.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much again for doing this with me. This is so fun. I'm like falling in love even more every week that we're doing this. And we'll be back next week for our third show.
Okay, sounds good.